Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Colony Drop, a Gundam podcast. My name is Brian, my co-pilot is Isaac, and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to the long-running meta-series Mobile Suit Gundam. Today we will finish up our discussion about the capital ships of the 1 Year War, focusing on the Gwazine and Pegasus classes. Hope you all enjoy.
The second largest ship on Zeon's side was the Gwazine class battleship. We know it well, Brian, because the Great Degwin was a Gwazine class.
Though the Great Degwin. Yes, to reiterate to the listeners, the Great Degwin is by far the best ship name in the history of Mobile Suit Gundam.
You know what? I don't think the Great Degwin ever fired a weapon during wartime, right? Because the only time we see it...
I don't think we ever saw it fire.
We see it twice, to my knowledge, right? In Origin, we see it actually kind of observing the battle, ready to fight, but not really planning on it. Mm-hmm. And then the other time we see it, it's going to a peace negotiation, and it gets destroyed. So, the flagship of the whole Zeon armada never really actually fired a weapon. Well, I guess the Delos became the flagship, but the original flagship, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but Gwazine class are beasts, okay? They're the largest battleships, aside from the Delos, but the Delos is a carrier. They're the largest battleships in the 1 Year War. I don't think any ships afterwards even came close. Like, even the Titans never built anything close to this size. It's just loaded with weapons. It could probably take on fleets of Salamuses and Magellans on its own. It held a lot of mobile suits. It was able to hold 20. That's a ton at the time of the 1 Year War. But, as usual, Zeon didn't build a lot of them for whatever reason. And they ate fuel like nothing else. If you look at a Gwazine, there's these like large globes on it. Those are external fuel tanks because this thing just consumes fuel just like nothing else.
Similar to the Musai, again, we've seen a lot of different aesthetics for the Gwazine class over the years. So the one in the original Mobile Suit Gundam, it just... I don't know, the front of the ship, it reminds me of like baggy eyes. It looks like it has eyes, and it's like the ship hasn't slept in a long time, and it makes me laugh. Yeah, it looks like a sleepy lobster.
I can see that now. Yeah, I can't unsee it. It always reminded me kind of like a catfish or like, I don't know, an Asian dragon or something. Like, I always thought the front area, that's like the mustache that the dragons have sometimes, and like Asian style dragons, or like a catfish, because like the catfish has long mustache kind of tentacly things.
A sleepy catfish, I think, that's call it now. It does look like a catfish. That's perfect.
We'll name that in our side story. One of the Gwazines will be called the sleepy catfish. I don't know. Maybe it has trouble with its power system, so like they call it, they say to sleep or something. Intermittently falls asleep.
That's pretty good.
But this was one of my favorite ships, probably because we see it in 003. This is Delaz's flagship. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool. My one complaint, we'll talk about that when we get to 003, but man, this ship should have had a better exit. But
it's hard to beat the double cross. Hard to beat the betrayal.
Yeah, that was quite the betrayal. And ironically, I like Shima and Delaz for different reasons. This was always a cool ship. I thought it had a great design, and I always liked seeing it.
Yeah, and I believe Delaz's was called the Gwazine, right?
Yeah, which is, I don't know, that is too close to the name of your actual ship, right?
Yeah, I know. And it's also confusing too, because I think there's some other ships called the Gwazine throughout the years. Like, I'm pretty sure there's one in like Zeta. Or maybe they pronounce that one differently. It's been a while since I've seen that, but maybe they say that one's the Gwazine or something. But
no, I think I know what you're talking about. Axis built their own version of a Gwazine that looks very close, but also very different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that one I think is bigger, but
yeah, that shows up in 003 at the end. That's the Axis admirals flying that ship. But yeah, God, Gwazine. He called his the Gwazine?
Gwazine, yeah.
That's a terrible name. Imagine like being a captain of a battleship and you're gonna call your ship like the Mattle Sheep. Well, it's like, sir. But these ships were always pretty cool, I thought.
while I do think the 0079 one looks like a sleepy catfish, the way they made it in Origin was way better.
Yeah.
They downplayed the fuel tanks. Like in 0079, the fuel tanks are very prominent and they're kind of like pinkish and they just really stick out. But in the Origin version, it's a much better modern take, I think, and it looks pretty neat. So if they ever redo the rest of Origin, I'm excited to see the great Degwin take flight.
Oh boy. I just read some of the names that they have for Gwazines, some of the known names. All right. There's the Great Degwin. There's the Gwadin. There's the Guamal, Guarin, Guarib, Gandoa, the Guashu, and the Ghidorah.
The Ghidorah? What is this, Godzilla?
That's Ghidorah.
Yeah. There's clearly a theme here, a Gwa theme. That must be a prerequisite.
Maybe Degwin gave special instructions that only he can have like one that's actually like a name. Like everybody else needs to name there's something that's unintelligible.
Yeah, not a lot of variety with those names. But super cool ship though. Do you think the Gwazine class is cooler looking than a Musai?
Absolutely. I'd rather be in a Gwazine.
Well, of course.
I think a Gwazine could probably take on multiple Magellans at once.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
I
believe it outperforms the Magellan.
Yeah, I don't know what the Federation was thinking, but actually, I'd like to know the story of the Gwazine. Like, did Zeon build this battleship from the ground up, or was this something civilian that they kind of transformed? No, but there's no way this was something civilian. It's too big.
Yeah, I think it's too big, and there's nothing else that really looks like it on the Zeon side or the Federation side.
Yeah, that's true. So okay.
If anything, I would say they based it on a Magellan, and they made it look like they gave it the Zeon look.
Oh, so they were like, okay, we need our own battleship flagship.
Yeah.
We need to outdo the Magellan. We're gonna out Magellan the Magellan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's much bigger than Magellan, so.
Yeah. Moving on to Zeon's answer to the Pegasus class, or actually, I think that the Pegasus was the answer to the Zanzibar, is the Zanzibar, which is an assault carrier. That pretty much just means that it's, I don't know, kind of a dedicated, I wouldn't even say it's a dedicated mobile suit carrier. It was clearly designed for Earth's invasion because it can go to Earth and exit Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, but it doesn't do it very effectively, like the white base does.
It needs help.
Yes, as we saw in the 8th MS team, that Zanzibar, that tries to get back to space, is pretty much a sitting duck for a sniper with a long beam rifle. So sad when that one went up into flames. But I think the design on this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it just looks like a fast ship for some reason.
Yeah, I think it's got a nice, sleek design. I do like in Gundam that you can definitely tell the difference between one of these ships that's supposed to operate on Earth and one of these ships that's supposed to operate in space. And this one definitely seems like it could, obviously anything can really work in space, but this one seems a little bit more aerodynamic, so you can tell that it's meant to kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, it's kind of the only Zeon ship that has wings that look like, they could plausibly help it stay afloat in the sky.
Yeah. But at least it could glide down if it had to.
Right. We actually don't see this too much in the original 0079. For whatever reason, it shows up more in like side stories and also in 0083, where it was Shima's flagship. I always thought that was pretty cool. But I think a lot of them, or maybe the bulk of them, were used after Odessa when Zeon started retreating from Earth. So that must mean almost all of them were on Earth at the time, right? Because we don't see too many of them at Abawaku or Solomon.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if the reason that we see them mostly in side stories is that maybe this design held up pretty well over the years. So when they went back and they said, "What can we use?" Like the Zanzibar seemed like a good fit.
Probably, or maybe it meant that all the Musais were actually in the main battles. Like if there's actually going to be a shooting fight, Zeon would rather send a Musai than a Zanzibar. So,
yeah,
that makes sense.
It's got a cool name.
I know it was all such a cool name.
It always makes me think of Metal Gear Solid, though.
Which one?
whatever game they talked about Zanzibar Island.
I don't remember. Zanzibar's so cool. Like, I've never been there, but I don't know. It's cool how there's like such a big island just off a continent that has like no other islands.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. So let's hop over to the Federation and talk about the Pegasus. Tell us all about it, Brian.
All right, so the Pegasus class. So the Pegasus class is the class of ship that the White Base is. And the White Base is sort of the main, capital ship on the Federation side that we follow through the original Mobile Suit Gundam 0079 TV series. And this is what everyone calls the Trojan Horse. It's this white ship that has wings, and it pretty much looks like a Trojan horse. It's spot on. It's got these two front sort of legs that serve as the mobile suit catapults. And the big thing with this ship was, like we alluded to earlier, it was the first ship that the Federation made that was made to hold and launch mobile suits. In addition to that, it used what was called the Minovsky craft system that allowed it to sort of fly at low altitudes on Earth and escape from Earth's atmosphere back into space without the use of the booster rockets, which we saw in Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin. So that was a huge leg up on the other Federation ships in terms of mobility and just flexibility. You didn't have to attach this big rocket, get onto like a launch pad, spend all this time boosting straight up, probably very vulnerable. So the White Base could kind of fly around and go back to space whenever it was kind of safe. And, while we only really see one in the original show, past that original show, they've introduced many more Pegasus class ships. And, given that the White Base was in the first episode of the original show, it definitely has one of the sort of more 1979 designs. Like, it looks very much like a Trojan horse. It is not subtle at all. Whereas maybe over the years that Trojan horse design has stayed, but I think it's become a little bit more subtle. Would you agree with that, Isaac?
Yeah, I would even go so far as to say that I don't like the original design. It is way too blocky and clunky. It's almost kind of ugly. I know I'm saying that as a Gundam fan, but they definitely improved the design moving forward. They're just some beautiful designs. I think my favorites are like the Albion and the Gray Phantom. But the original White Base is the original White Base. But man, it is a boxy design, and were it not for the colors, it would look like an ugly ship.
Yeah, I think the white definitely helps it here.
It's the hero colors. It's the same colors as the Gundam.
That's right. Darn right. White, blue, red, and a little bit of yellow, just like the Gundam. They've definitely, smoothed out the design a little bit over the years. I will say, though, that the White Base looked great at the end of Origin. So if they ever finish Origin, I'm really excited to see the White Base, take off again, because it's a very iconic design. Everyone associates the Trojan horse design with Gundam. So much so that, in Gundam Seed, which was what we call an attempt at a reboot of the Universal Century, the Archangel from that show is to modernize White Base. Looking back, is the Archangel as cool as the White Base? I don't know.
I like Gundam Seed, but let me say no.
Yeah. I would much rather see that new version of the White Base, or the updated version of the White Base they had at the end of Origin. So hopefully one day they animate the rest and we get to see that take off in a flight of glory in modern animation, because I think it'll do it some wonders, and it'll help update the iconic design for the world. But so like I said, they've introduced a lot of different Pegasus classes over the years. There was a lot more than I remember, and a lot of them, there's not a whole lot of information on, but these are the main ones that I found. So you can tell me if I'm missing any, and if anyone out there knows of ones I'm missing, please comment and share a picture with us. So there are at least two other ones that look pretty much exactly like the White Base. And those are the White Base 2, aka the White Base Junior, which is in the manga called Char's Deleted Affair. And that looks pretty much exactly like the White Base. Very boxy. And then there's also just one that's just called the Pegasus. And that's from the Mobile Suit Variations sort of designs. And I couldn't even find a picture of that one, but given that it's, I think that was actually supposed to be the first ship of the line or something like that. So I assume it looks exactly like the White Base. So these three, you got the Pegasus, the White Base, and the White Base 2. also known as the White Base Junior, they all look the same. Heading a little bit further into 0079, you've got the Gray Phantom, which you just mentioned, Isaac. And the Gray Phantom, I think, is maybe one of the best Pegasus class designs.
Yeah.
It looks pretty cool. They kind of like flattened it and really made it a lot sleeker.
Right.
And we first saw this in 0080. And, you know, if you go back and watch 0079 today, you're going to be like, wow, that White Base is a really weird looking ship. But if you watch 0080 and you see the Gray Phantom, you're going to say, wow, that is a cool looking ship. It's a very good updated design. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see, you know, well, I guess we already would know what it would look like in Origin. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the live action movie, if they do use a white base, it looks a lot like the Gray Phantom.
It should. It should look like the Gray Phantom or the Albion, I thought, because those are such awesome designs. They look more like spaceships, but also at the same time kind of tough in a way, like especially the Gray Phantom. You know, I know things didn't go the way they thought it would in the battle, but the ship still looks pretty cool.
Right. So on that point, we touched on this earlier in one of the earlier podcasts, but the Gray Phantom it's not really destined for greatness. It went to Side 6, the Libot colony, to respond to the attack from the Cyclops team on the Gundam NT1, the Gundam Alex. And, you know, our pal Mikhail, I believe his name was Mikhail, who piloted the Kempfer, he wiped out their entire mobile suit team. So the Gray Phantom is lucky that it got away alive from that battle, given that he killed their whole defense team, basically. And then that colony was going to be nuked at the end of 0080. So that's the first potential nuke that would have hit the Gray Phantom. So it got out of 0079 and 0080 alive. Where did it go in 0083, Isaac?
It went to the Naval Review at Konpei Island, previously known as Solomon.
Yes. And so because it was at the Naval Review, we all know what happened at the Naval Review. Gato nuked the whole fleet, and the Gray Phantom suffered severe damage. So it just seems like everyone really wants to nuke the Gray Phantom, in my mind. Although it suffered a lot of damage, it apparently was not destroyed in that, because we do see it again in Gundam Unicorn, where its wreckage is sort of being used as a base by the Zeon remnants that attacked the Torrington base, what a great episode of Unicorn that was. So although it didn't get destroyed during the Naval Review, I guess it must have somehow made it to Earth at some point and sort of just crashed there. So there's probably a side story waiting to happen there. There are 3 other ships I could find that look exactly like the Gray Phantom, I think, because I couldn't really find too many pictures of them. So there was one called the Troy Horse. That's from Mobile Suit Variations. And it was a sister ship to the Gray Phantom. Yeah, it's a pretty lame name. That's about as bad as Pegasus, right? Come up with something like the Gray Phantom. That's a great name.
Yeah.
Troy Horse. That's like,
come on.
I don't know.
Did they name it after hearing like intel that Zeon was calling one of the ships the Trojan Horse?
Yeah.
That sounds terrible. What a terrible name.
Yeah. But similar to the Gray Phantom, it sort of suffered the same fate. It went to the Naval Review, suffered the nuclear attack from Gato. And although we do see what happens to the Gray Phantom later on, you know, we see it's on Earth, therefore it must have survived the Naval Review. We never see the Troy Horse again. So to me, that means it was either destroyed, or maybe there's an opportunity to bring it back someday in another side story. It's always good to leave threads open for people to use later on, and this could be one of those things. There was yet a third one that looked like the Gray Phantom that was also destroyed at the Naval Review, and that one was called the Stallion. That one seems very like 1980s porno name, but so that means that Gato destroyed 3 Pegasus classes in one go. And in addition, we haven't talked about the Birmingham class yet, but also at the Naval Review was the Birmingham class, which is basically like a super good version of like a Magellan, like the newest class. So Gato is like a total boss. So I don't know. I mean, he did more damage in one day than Zeon did to Pegasus class is pretty much the entire war. So
Oh my God.
kudos to Gato.
Brian, after everything you just said, I feel like Gato rivals like the solar ray in being able to destroy fleets, right?
Yeah, we need to go edit. We need to go edit him back into our super weapon episode.
Yeah, like we just send a Gato.
Oh, he'll take care of it.
Yeah. No wonder they let him get away with like his non-regulation haircut. Like this guy's so good. He can do anything.
Yeah, totally. And then the fourth one, there is a fourth that looks like the Grey Phantom called the Forestal or the Forestal. I don't know how to pronounce it. I assume it's Forestal.
Yeah, Forestal, I think.
And that is from a side story manga called Missing Link. Don't have too much information on that, but yeah, it looks like the Grey Phantom. So on the positive side, we don't have a lot of information about those Grey Phantom-y looking ships, but it does seem like the Grey Phantom design is super popular in terms of side stories, which that's why I think when the live action movie comes around, I bet the white base is going to look a lot like the Grey Phantom. Seems like it's been popular with authors over the years when they want to go back to the Pegasus class. It looks like that design is super popular to draw on.
Pretty much, yeah. You know something weird that I've always noticed? Every time we see the Pegasus class, it's never the capital ship. I can't think of any one time the Admiral was on the Pegasus class, right? The Pegasus class, it's almost like if you're in a Pegasus class, the rest of the Federation fleet, whether they're in Magellan's or Solace classes, they always sort of have not even envy, just contempt for the Pegasus, right? It's always like, oh, is that new Pegasus class or whatever?
Right.
It's like, do they just view it as like, oh, it's a glorified transport for mobile suits? They're not really part of our upper chain of command here in the fleet. They're not a real warship. They're just lugging around mobile suits. Is that sort of maybe you think the Federation's opinion in their officer corps? Am I just imagining this? Have you ever seen a Federation Pegasus class as like the flagship or running the show? It never happens.
No, I don't think we have. And I think there's probably two, headcanon explanations for that. One being, like you said, there is contempt. I would agree there's contempt. And I don't know if that's just because the higher up brass, they don't like these new types of ships that are hogging all the glory, versus their normal ships they've had over the years. So that could be one thing. And then the second thing that's a more practical explanation would be that because they can carry mobile suits, those are the main warships. So the Admiral can't be on there because these things need to be on the front lines. And maybe the Admirals, maybe it's not smart for them to be necessarily on the front lines. I don't know. That would be how I would explain it.
I don't know. I don't really buy that explanation. I figured like these new advanced line of ships, an Admiral should probably be running it. But then again, half the time, or maybe no, the majority of the time we see a Pegasus, it's always on some secret special mission, right? Like the Grey Phantom or the White Base. You know, it's not really part of a dedicated combat fleet, I guess, unless they shove it in there because we have to attack this asteroid base or something like that. Right?
Hey, when they did be part of the fleet? At the Naval Review.
Yeah. There you go.
So another Pegasus class ship was called the Thoroughbred, and this was also during 0079. It showed up in the Encounters in Space video game for the PS2, as well as the video game called Battlefield Record UC 0081 for the PS3. This was the ship that carried RX-78 units 4 and 5. So that was, I believe, in the Encounters in Space video game. And then after it survived that conflict, it was refitted and used again in another video game in a sort of a different capacity in 0081. So this ship this ship is pretty unique. It doesn't share the design with any other Pegasus classes that I can tell. Not my favorite Pegasus class design, but it's still probably an improvement over the original White Base for sure. I don't know if you've seen the Thoroughbred or have any. You love the name, yeah.
You know what? It's still a little too blocky for my liking, but it's an improvement over the original White Base.
I can tell the designer of this one tried to accessorize the White Base a little bit, give it some more, bits of color here and there.
It's more interesting. They went with an interesting color, kind of I don't know what that is, aquamarine.
Yeah.
A seafoam White Base, a seafoam Pegasus. God, this whole ship class, the Federation was just evolving as they went along, right? There's no two that look the same. Well, okay, there are, but my point is there's just such diversity just in this class. You don't see that with the Solomons. The Solomons are just so uniform.
Yep. The next one I have on my list is the Blanc Rival. So this was probably the most unique looking Pegasus class ship. Might be one of my favorites. I can't tell if I like this or the Grey Phantom more. This showed up in Gundam The Ride, a Baoku, which was I don't know, what would you call that? It was basically like a screen ride, 3D screen ride.
A Star
early
Tours
2000s.
type simulator.
Yeah. I think it was from the early 2000s-ish. And it also, I think it's currently showing in the manga called The Return of Johnny Raiden. And it was at the Battle of Baoku, and that's why it shows up in Gundam The Ride. Have you seen this one, Isaac? This one looks bonkers.
No.
Yeah, check this one out. The Blanc Rival, BLANC, and then space, new word, rival. This design is pretty neat because they take those little shield-looking things that are normally on the side of the ship, and they put them on the top, and they sort of move the wings down, and the boosters in the back are just blown out, way bigger than normal. This totally reminds me of something that would be from like Gundam Sentinel or something.
You know what this looks like? That video game Raiden.
Oh yeah.
This looks like a boss that you fight.
I think it's pretty cool looking. I don't know. What do you think?
It looks pretty awesome. I'd like to fly this one. Wow, this one looks great.
Yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah.
So if I had to choose one for the live action movie, I'm thinking either Grey Phantom or the Blanc Rival here, people. That's my vote. One thing that's noteworthy about this one is in Gundam The Ride, this is the ship that carried the G3 Gundam.
Ah.
Yeah, so that's pretty neat.
Yeah. I like this design. This is pretty cool. God, they got so experimental with their designs.
The next one I have, Pegasus class, is called the Spartan. This is the Pegasus class that was featured in Gundam Thunderbolt. And this design is pretty cool. I do like it a lot. It's blocky, but in a good way. And I like that they made the wings a little different. They like moved them up a little higher, and they made them yellow, and they made them longer. It gives it definitely a unique appearance. And the name Spartan, they do have a big Spartan logo stamped on it, which is pretty cool. Have you seen this one, Isaac? This one's pretty neat.
Oh.
It is probably too blocky for you, but they made it blocky, but they narrowed it so it doesn't look like it doesn't look as bad blocky, I think.
It's almost taller.
Right.
Its carrier bays are kind of taller now.
Right.
Yeah. It looks okay. I mean, they clearly designed it to look more modern. You know, it's got a lot more detail to it. But overall, I mean, you could look at it and you'd be like, yeah, that's a Pegasus.
Yeah, it clearly fits in.
Yeah.
And then the last one I had on my list was the Albion.
Yeah, Albion.
From 0083. And while this one was built in 0083, I included it on the Pegasus class list because, I don't know, 0083, it's kind of still within that. It's not obviously within the 1 year war, but it's, like you said, a lot of the stuff used in that conflict was built around the same time, and the Albion clearly... while it was built in 0083, so it's not 1 year war related, but it fits right in with these other Pegasus class ships. So now that you've seen these other Pegasus class ships, is the Albion still your favorite, Isaac? Or is that Blanc Rival getting to you?
I just, you know what? Yeah, you switched me over, Brian. You converted me. I'm gonna go with the Blanc Rival just because. Out of all the white bases, it's the most unique looking, and I actually think it's kind of the most aggressive looking too. Like its wings look like it's just ready to attack.
It does look very aggressive. Yes, those wings are. They really committed to the wings on the Blanc Rival.
I mean, for all
those
we
are some
know,
serious wings.
Yeah, maybe it performs better in the atmosphere compared to the other Pegasuses. I don't know.
Could be.
Maybe that wing made all the difference for better maneuverability in Earth's atmosphere.
It's going places though with those thrusters though. Wings are not.
Yeah. They like double their engine power or something.
Yeah, but I do think the Albion is a great design as well. I would not fault anyone who thinks the Albion is the best Pegasus class for sure. Especially given that the Blanc Rival was made after the Albion was made, right? So designers take keys from everything that's come before. So
you know what? Are you sure the Albion was built in 0083? Like it was a brand new ship on that year?
I think I read somewhere that it was built in 0083. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. Everything was so new that year. But I mean, looking at it, it could pass as something they built in the 1 year war, but maybe didn't see that much action or something. You know?
Yeah. I mean, given that it's a Pegasus class, it seems
Yeah.
like it was probably at least in the planning stages, I would imagine. It doesn't look, anywhere as near as complicated as the Blanc rival. It definitely fits in with the other ones that we looked at, particularly. I think it fits in really nicely alongside the Grey Phantom.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll talk about capital ships in other series, but it's kind of interesting that this class sort of got phased out in a way, or I don't know, maybe mashed up with what the Salamis should be and what the Magellan should be. Just got kind of mashed together with what the Pegasus is.
Yeah,
as
I
the
mean
UC
they
went on.
kind of evolved into, I guess, the Argama and the Nail Argama, but those aren't quite as iconic to me. I
Yeah.
agree. It is a little weird that we don't see quite as much as we go on. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a new one in the future. We should mention the Birmingham class just because I
Do it.
mentioned it earlier. So
Actually,
the last one I'll mention is the Birmingham class, which showed up in 0083. I know it's not a 1 year war ship, but because of we mentioned everything that Gato nuked, this was among them. It was the only ship of its class. I don't know. I view this as like the Federation's answer to the Gwazine. I don't know. What do you think?
it was definitely going to be their new flagship. I'm not sure because of what happened. I assume
Yep.
they didn't build any more. Like they just threw the design in the trash bin. They're like, no.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like you said the Federation answer to the Gwazine, right?
Yeah. It seems like the
Yeah.
big one of the fleet, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. Because the Federation, there's no point in building something like the Delos, right? Because there's just too much area to cover. But you could build a big battleship that puts the Magellan to shame, and that's what the Birmingham was. It's interesting you mentioned it though, because I had no idea they only built one at and had to go to the naval review as the
Yeah.
flagship.
Well, maybe if it didn't get nuked, maybe they would have built more. But yeah, there was only one, and Gato blew it up, so didn't turn out to
Yeah.
be super useful. Very unfortunate for the Federation, but kind of serves them right, to be honest. The Birmingham did go on to be the base for the two other really big ships that kind of look like this later on. This is well past the 1 year war time frame now, but
Right.
more in the Grips conflict era that the Titans built the man, I don't remember how to pronounce this. The Dogos Gyar.
Uh-huh.
Is that how do you know if that's how you say it?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure someone out there knows how to pronounce it, but it's the Dogos Gyar, Dogos Jar. I don't know. The big one from the Titans made. And then the Federation makes another one that we see in Unicorn, the General Rebel.
Yeah. Those ships were monsters, but I don't think the Birmingham had launch catapults, right?
You're right. So it could not carry mobile suits. Did not have a catapult. Which, got to be honest, that seems like a dumb decision given the time frame. Why would you make one without mobile suit deck?
Yeah, I'm sure that contributed to why they decided not to go ahead with the design of the Birmingham. I mean, the war had changed so much by then. You have to carry mobile suits into combat. So to just be so arrogant to not have any and just make a larger Magellan, just total arrogance. And that's not the reason they got destroyed at the naval review, but it certainly didn't help.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know, ace GMs from there. Maybe they could have gotten a shot off at at Gato or something, but I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Or at least have one of them sitting on the deck,
Yeah.
shooting or something. But what a disaster. The naval review.
How arrogant of the Fed. We're not talking about WA3, but how arrogant of the Federation have a naval review when they know that like their prototype nuke-equipped Gundam has been stolen by a terrorist.
Yeah, it does seem like a very Trumpian move.
Yeah, like, we're going to go ahead with the naval review. It's like, this is a terrible idea. This is probably the one reason they stole the weapon.
Yeah, you got to be, if you're
would they use it on?
Zeon. Yeah, exactly. If you're Zeon, you're salivating when you hear that they announce a naval review.
Yeah.
Well, Isaac, did you have any other capital ships on your list? Or do you think we covered
I
most
sure
of them?
do.
Oh boy, what is it?
I have two left, and I'll combine them together. These are the Zeon resupply ships.
Saving the best for last, I see.
Exactly. So the Federation just had one supply ship, the Columbus, and it had a ton of room, right? It did its thing. That was it. Zeon had two resupply ships. They weren't designed to hold mobile suits, and they were both unarmed. The first class was called the Papua class, and it held enough supplies to be able to resupply 2 Musais. But Zeon phased it out by the end of the war and replaced it with a larger ship called the Pazock class. And the Pazock class can do the job of 2 Papua classes. So one single Pazock can resupply 4 Musais. So I thought that was interesting that, well, actually not interesting. It was very Zeonic that you focus so much on improving something that really shouldn't be improved on. I mean, well, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it made more sense for Zeon to like resupply more ships with just one ship. But actually, no. No. Why are we redesigning a supply ship during a losing war? Shouldn't we use resources and time on something else? Like, I don't know, improving the performance of Zaku's or, figuring out a way to defeat the Federation.
Nope. Gotta fix up those supply ships.
Yeah,
I will say I had the Papua and the Pazock on my list, but I looked at them and I was like, nope, I'm not doing those.
I don't blame you because there's so little to talk about them. I'm done. What is there to say? They're supply ships.
They don't look very great. I'll say that.
Yeah, that, and I mean, the Columbus is a supply ship also, yes, but to the Columbus's credit, it could be easily drafted into becoming a mobile suit carrier, and not even just a mobile suit carrier, a massive mobile suit carrier, because it can hold 20 mobile suits. If you're Zeon and you're flying around and you see a Columbus, I mean, you, pardon my language, but you kind of have your pants moments, right? You have no idea if they're transporting like medical supplies and canned food, or if it's loaded up with 20 like Ace GMs and they can fly it out at any moment to destroy you.
Yeah.
If you're in a Salamis or a Magellan and or even a GM like doing a patrol and you see like a Papua or a Pazock, you might not even bother destroying it, right? You kind of just call it in, and then because there's no weapons on these ships.
I would say the Papua looks better than the Pazock. The Pazock looks
I
don't
fragile.
That's as fragile as the plants from Gundam Seed.
Yeah, it's got like these 2 necks, and I mean they connect to presumably the supply areas. Yeah, it looks like if you got like 2 lucky shots on this thing, it would crumble. Yeah. As for the Papua, its design actually kind of looks like, if you didn't know, if it was your first time seeing it, you could assume it was a warship or some type of carrier, but it's not.
The Columbus reminds me of that ship of the mobile suit carrier that we saw in Gundam the Origin that dropped those crappy gun cannons.
Yeah, I'm sure it was of similar design. Yeah. I mean, it probably was an early version, actually. So, yes. Now, listeners, you've heard about Zeon's resupply ships.
Don't say we're not thorough.
Yeah.
We may not have gotten all the Pegasus class ships, but damn it, we got Zeon supply ships on this episode.
If we talk about the Federation supply ships, we have to talk about Zeon supply ships. Fair is fair.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed our rundown of the capital ships from the 1 Year War. If you think we missed your favorite capital ship, please let us know in the comments. You can leave us a comment on YouTube or on Twitter at Colony Dropcast.
We'll be sure to listen in next time to our next episode here on Colony Drop, a Gundam podcast. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
See you next week.